Hey guys, Teresa with Sippie Couture. We're doing the black and white swirl marble tumbler. It's like a glitter swirl with marble on top. It's really pretty. I had a few requests for this one, and so we're gonna go ahead and show you. Like it always happens, I started my tumbler, then realized people were asking, so so here we go. I have it painted white. You don't have to base paint this one white to start with. I just had a bunch of cups that I was prepping, and this was one I pulled, and then I remembered that it had to be a swirl, so it's white, but it's okay. So what we're doing is I want my lines to go in a pretty good diagonal. This is just a guide for where to put the color. We're definitely making sure that that black is on there because we want the black glitter to have a lot of depth to it. So, you know, we'll have those on there. It will get covered up by some of this other spray paint just a little with the overspray, but it's really not that big of a deal. Like I said, it's just a guide to make sure our colors are in the right spot. The colors we do want to come out fairly bright is the silver and the white. So when you lay that down, go a little closer to your cup to kind of get that on there. And then we're gonna do our white. Actually, where's my silver? And that's the piece right here. It's just a general idea of where I want these colors to fall. When we're putting glitter down, this may end up changing a little, and that's fine. It's just like I said, just so that all of my colors will have a really good base to go off of. All right, so that's what I have for right now. We have black will fade into silver, and that will brighten up with white, and then it will kind of go again. I'll probably drop some silver along that line to help it fade more to the black, kind of give a little more blend, but we can worry about that whenever we're doing the glitter. Also, you can see right there my paint went on a little heavy, it bubbled a little. That's not a big deal. I'm not gonna worry about stripping that. This is getting covered in so much glitter, you will not even know that was there. So don't worry about it if your paint gets a little runny. Like I said, tons of glitter is going on this. So that's what we have so far. Also, my dowel rod, I show you guys this a lot, just in case you haven't seen my video. I use a dowel rod that I got from either Home Depot or what is it called? One of the craft stores, and it's just to give me a little more, make it a little easier whenever I'm painting my tumblers, because I can twist my cup on the dowel rod rather than have my hand, you know, kind of spinning in weird angles trying to get a consistent flow of spray paint. So there's that. We're gonna go on with Speed Dry Epoxy. I use, even with the swirls, I use Speed Dry for the entire process of making this cup. I like that it sets up pretty quick. It allows me to place all of my glitters exactly where I want without them really flowing around on me, and I can use a lot of epoxy for that. And then also whenever I go to put some of the marbling on the end, I'm able to put those lines exactly where I want it, and they won't shift around all that much unless I apply heat. Everything I do with these designs, I put all these lines, kind of lay everything down intentionally. I actually have not even tried one of those where the where you put it and the glitter kind of flows around like swirls on its own. The thought of that kind of scares me, just because you know, I kind of want everything to lay in a certain way. So I haven't quite tried that yet. All right, so what I have right now is I'm putting my epoxy on. I have my heat gun just to make sure that's worked on and I have an even coat. I put a good amount of epoxy on this because I'm using so much glitter. I really want it to be able to soak into some of the sections of this cup and help it to lay flat, especially with one of these black ones that I'm using. It's a really chunky glitter mix that I put together, and I do not want to fight with that one. I just did some other tumblers, so I have a bit of glitter, some purplish showing up from off my glove from the last ones I did just now. But like I said, this is getting so much glitter, it's not even a big deal. All right, make sure this is evenly coated. One of the things that I always tell you guys is that whenever you put on epoxy sometimes, if you're running your glove in a line, and I'll do it just to show you, if you're running your glove and kind of smearing it on, especially if you're using like a speed dry, it'll start to set pretty quick, and you'll have these lines in your epoxy where your glove applied the epoxy. You'll see it kind of set. It definitely does that with regular epoxy too. It's not just speed dry. You'll have those lines. So what I'm doing is I take my glove and I put it pretty tight on my hand and I pat all around my tumbler. What this does is it creates these tiny little like ripples, like a little textured pattern in your epoxy. And I find that it's easier to get your epoxy to level out from tiny, tiny ripples rather than big old streaks. I don't know, it's just my way of doing things. Everybody has their own way, this is mine. So that's in. You can hit it with a little heat and that will help it even out a little more. Again, this right here, I don't want any big streaks because you'd be able to see those streaks, but as far as these ripples, you won't be able to see those. And then we're gonna start going on with our glitter. We're using all Mr. Nola's glitter for this. And there's a lot of colors. There's blacks, silver, and whites are my base for this. Let me get my sheets of paper. All right, and let me get a piece of parchment paper also. The parchment paper we're going to use in a minute to help lay all of our epoxy flat. I had a piece right here that I thought was going to be a good one, and then I just realized that's already covered in a few other colors, so we're not using that. All right, I'm going to start with my blacks. I want my whites that I lay down to stay really bright, so I'm starting with black, then I'll go the darker, almost silvery color that I have. Well, gray, I guess, and then the whites. So I'm going to wait for this black to come around. I don't want to chase all over my cup. I'm going to dump a little of this out. If you could see this glitter right here, it's a mix of big pieces. There's some fine in there and some mediums. I really am not sure where I got this glitter from. I know that a few of it, I had a few glitters left at one point, and I didn't love this chunky glitter. Like, it was only this black chunky glitter that I had, and I didn't love it. So I mixed them all together. So I'll pull it and see. I know that Nola's has their own mix, their own black heavy glitter. It may even be theirs. To be honest with you, I'm not completely sure. But regardless, I will pull the glitters that they have that will make a great substitute if you don't have this one. All right, so we're gonna let that roll around a minute. And then if you can see, some of this fell onto that part, and that's fine. I love this because it's gonna pull through later. So what I'm gonna do is kind of look at that other side, see how far that gap is, and see if I wanna close it in a little. I'm not gonna let that black fall onto the white so much, but I'm definitely gonna go along that line. And I'll put a few chunky pieces through there. All right, we're gonna knock this off, because with using the other glitters next, you really don't want to really contaminate anything, especially those whites. So a good way is to pour it into another cup and do it, or just really tap off your cup pretty good. All right, next I'm going in with Gray Ghost. Like I said, all of these are from Mr. Nola's glitter, and I'm going to line each side of this black to help it fade into the silver then white. And I'm not going to chase it. We're just going to go a little at a time, drop it on there. Put a little along this part. Then go to the other side of here. I'm just following along that black line to help transition to when I jump to that brighter silver glitter. All right, dump this back in. And we're gonna go in, we're actually gonna go in with Alibi now. Alibi is one of my all-time favorite glitters from Nola's. It's so pretty. It's like high flash. It's just gorgeous. So I'm gonna put this on that silver line. You can see how it falls in. Watch how it does this. Let me wait a minute. I'll show you. You can see how it falls in and kind of mixes up against that black, especially up at the top where some of those black flakes kind of fell sideways. It just, I don't know, I love it. It just looks so pretty. So we're gonna put a good strip in here. And I'm lining each side. I'm going pretty close and lining each side of that of that gray. And I'll spread a little through here to help break that up. Oh, had a little mambo dot in there. All right. We're going to make sure this is kind of knocked off really well because now we're going in with Westbank. All right, and I'm going to do everything I can to drop Westbank only on that white. Drop that right through there. And then what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll randomly drop this into some of these darker parts. It's just going to be a little though. Something about it kind of looks really pretty the way it mixes itself in. It almost ties it together. All of my ombres that I do, I always pick a color or two and drop them throughout the whole cup, and it's really, it's such a little bit that you probably wouldn't notice if I didn't tell you. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with April. April is part of the Birthstone series, and I'm going to put that kind of sporadically throughout some of the silvers and some of the whites. There's a few different cuts in here, and this will grab on to wherever it wants the most. And the good thing about this is that with the color that it is, some of it's transparent, so it will pull through. You know, if it drops on a piece of black, it will pull that through without showing a real opal color to it. I'm gonna let that fall off, or I'm gonna knock it off on a different sheet of paper. That way, if anything else pulls off with it, I'm not getting any black into this color. That's not too bad. All right, this can actually go all into Alibi. There's more of a silver in there than anything else. All right, so what I'm gonna do is this big section that doesn't quite have any black to it. Let's see, I'm gonna take my parchment paper, lay it down, and then see if I can use some of that epoxy since we put it on heavy to help grab onto some more black for that section. All you're doing, you take a clean piece of parchment paper and press it down all the way around the tumbler to help get those colors, to help get that glitter to lay flat. If you don't do that step, you're really not going to like yourself when it's time to do epoxy and sanding. It's difficult. It's really difficult to come back from that. All right, so let me dump some of that out. I'm going to see what catches. All right, and then we'll go on with our parchment paper again because that will loosen up some of that black that's sitting there. Tap it down around my edges so I'm not fighting with it later. Every once in a while you'll get these pieces of glitter that the machine just doesn't cut right. And pick those out if you have those in there. I notice I get those a lot more with some of the chunkier pieces than I do the skinny ones. All right, I'm going to go back with Pirate Sally and see what I can brighten up against this white line, kind of turn it a little more silver. When you start looking at it up close, you can see the spots that didn't quite catch all of the glitter since there's a bit of chunkier pieces in here, and I want to make sure those are down. So that's it, we're just layering it in. That might be it. There's a few edges that, I'm going to take Westbank Junior, and I will get along those edges with Westbank Junior. Let me put this somewhere else. Put that aside. I was going to dump it back, but I see some heavy pieces in there. All right, this is Westbank Junior. I used it earlier for a different cup, so I had some set aside. All right, so what I'm doing whenever I'm adding this is that I don't want to make it noticeable that it's kind of a desperate look of it being on there. So what I'm doing is I'm dropping it at the end and then bringing it up to kind of tie it in. That way it doesn't look like I was just trying to patch something in one area. It kind of has a look that it was, you know, supposed to go in there. And I'm not a big fan of putting these thin glitters on top of chunkies. I don't like the way it looks when chunky has, like, you know, the flakes of different glitters over it. I like it to see it. I like to see kind of those chunky bits. So like right here where that white is, we're gonna press this on and kind of hope some of that falls off a little. So I'll do my final press with this paper, make sure everything gets down pretty good. When you're doing this, if you have parts of your parchment paper that have a little bit of epoxy on it from when you press it down, what will happen is that some of that glitter will pull off of the cup. I have one spot that did it, and it will be a pretty good chance to show you guys. See right there, and have it come back around. If you see right there, is it sticky? Yes. Okay, so what happened right there is that it was probably too much epoxy, and when I went to go press it down with the paper, it pulled up the glitter that was right there. The glitter got stuck, the glitter and epoxy got stuck to the parchment paper, and it just lifted up. So I'm gonna put that down to kind of patch that area. Knock everything off. Rip off a little corner of that. And then just make sure those edges and everything else is pressed down again. We're gonna let this sit for 2 hours, and then we're gonna take it outside and spray it with a clear spray paint. If you're doing swirls like this, you don't have to seal it. I like doing it because, like I said, I put my glitters in a certain spot, and I'm kind of like I strategically place them, and I want them to stay like that. Like, I like how it kind of flows over, and I like how some of these colors drifted. If you don't seal it and you go to put epoxy on it, some of the loose glitter on top will transfer over to other areas of the cup. It does work when you're doing a swirl pattern because in the end, it's not that big a deal. You can't completely see it, but oh look, there's one of those pieces I was saying earlier. Get that out. There we go. Okay, so it's not that big a deal. It will flow, and it'll help tie it together, but like I said, I like for it to be, I don't know, I put it where I want it. I want it to stay like that. So I'm gonna spray it with clear spray paint just to make sure it doesn't move around on me. And we'll be back in a little bit to do that. We're gonna be going on with our first coat of epoxy since I did the glitter. I did take it outside and I gave it just a quick clear, a few coats of clear spray paint, Rust-Oleum 2 times clear. I had matte. I used matte only because it was the first thing I saw. It's not a big deal if you use matte or gloss right now. There's times where I feel like it does matter if you use matte or gloss, but that's mainly if you're getting ready to put, you know, a clear decal on. It would have to be gloss, and I would use matte if I'm getting ready to like wipe off glitter, like, you know, a peekaboo type thing. That way it doesn't stick to the clear. I'm sorry, the gloss. But this doesn't really matter. So we're just doing a good coat of this epoxy right now. I'm gonna grab my torch and make sure all of my bubbles are out, which I never have problems with bubbles with this epoxy, so this should be pretty quick. And this coat of epoxy does not have to be flawless right now. I don't want any bubbles, but as far as like completely solid coverage, it doesn't have to be really, really solid right now. Our next step is going to be letting this sit for a few hours and then going back and starting our Milky Way effect. And for that will be adding more epoxy to it, so I'll just wait. If I wanted to, I could do the Milky Way on right now, but whenever I do my Milky Way, since I use Speed Dry Epoxy, my torch is going out. Since I do use Speed Dry Epoxy, it sets up quick, and I like to really make sure I put everything where I want and be able to wipe it away. And the reason why I let this set first is that if I were to go dig down, I run the risk of lifting up some of this glitter. Even though it's sealed, you kind of run the risk of moving around some of this glitter and kind of transferring it to a different side of your cup. And like I said, I put everything pretty strategically, so I'm going to make sure this is set. That way, if I decide to go a little more aggressive with the Milky Way, that I won't pull up any of this epoxy. So we'll let this set for a little bit, and then we'll go on with our colors. Okay, so I have that first layer of epoxy on, and now we're going to go through and add our layers onto this. Okay, so we have that layer of epoxy down, and now we're going to go ahead and mix up what we need for the marbling. I have just some pearl mica right here, and this little bucket is from Alumilite, but I think there's like 4 different pearl micas mixed into that. At one point I realized I had like 2 jars of this like micro pearl EX. What's it called? Pearl EX, yeah. I had a few of those, and it was taking up a lot of space, so I went ahead and just combined them all into that one jug since it was almost empty. So that's, like I said, a few different colors, but the color is pearl. It's just a white pearl. Mr. Nola's also has a silver pearl that's really pretty that you can use for that. But that one's just a regular. Where's my black paint? Okay, I'm using speed dry again, and like I said, I love doing speed dry for this because I like putting these the marbling in a really certain spot, and I don't like for them to move around a ton. And I definitely mix up too much epoxy right here, so I'll have to see what I can add this to. Alright, so I'm just getting a nice layer on there. I didn't sand anything yet for this. I did pull it off the turner and trim the bottom. That way it doesn't get too thick around this bottom. And it gives me kind of that cleaner line that I like to do. So I have just whatever was left on the end of my popsicle stick for that one. I'm going to put a little in here. I want to try to save this. I'm going to grab one more cup. And hopefully I can work quick enough so I can still use that. I don't think I'll be able to. Oh man. Oh well. Alright, so we're going to put a few drops of white. This is just white dye. If you don't have white dye, another great option would be the alcohol ink, this alcohol ink mixative. That will give you the same look. And then a few drop, like a good drop of black. You do. Like I said, you don't need a lot of this stuff, and probably what I use is too much, but it's okay to have a little left over. So mix this in real good. I use more pearl than any of the other colors for this marbling. So I'll kind of do the same thing as I'm mixing it in. Usually I would have that stuff dumped in a cup already, the different colors, but I wanted to kind of show you guys how much we're using here. Like I said, it's speed dry, so we're gonna move quick. Alright, so how I do this is I put the colors on the color, like black goes on black, white on white. Knock your torch on the floor. The pearl goes a little over everything, but I start off by just doing a little onto each color. And I don't want to chase my cup all over the place. I want to just kind of wait for it to come around to me. Once I see where those white lines are going to be, I go through and I add in white to a few other sections. I'll add it along this line right here. And if you can see how I'm just kind of dotting it and wiggling it back and forth, that will give almost like a thin marble line through it. You just definitely don't want this white to get away from you. You don't want it to be overwhelmingly white anywhere. Just a few good streaks. Then we're gonna put the black on. And that same thing, kind of like smushing it in there in different sections. I don't want to go a big fat drizzle. In the way that I turn it to the side, it'll kind of drop onto the cup in different thicknesses. Some will have like a thin streak, and then you'll have kind of like a glob that falls on. I feel like that gives it a much more natural look for that marble that we're going for. And then I'll do the same thing, and I'll drop some of this black in between some other colors to help tie it together. And again, it's just a thin little strip of it. I don't want to put it too close to that other black, so I'm going to wait for that to roll around. And it's just halfway through. I didn't even bring it all the way down on that one. All right, we'll add some silver, a little pearl. And that's going to go between a lot of different spots. We'll drizzle it almost between, well, definitely between the white and the black to help it blend. But it'll go almost between every little strip that we put down. Wait for that to come around so I'm not chasing it. And I'm bringing everything in kind of like a big swirl of it. When these colors start to mix together and layer up, it just looks so pretty. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our gloved finger and we're going to just encourage those to be not so solid lines. Don't break up the white too much, because if you do, it'll start to look cloudy through here. And we don't want the whole cup to be a cloudy white. We just want it to be, you know, not solid blobs across the cup. So do that, but bring it all the way, like from one end, like from the corner up there, all the way down. And dragging it this way is helping to mix up some of these colors. Like right here, it's all three. If we just bring that down, it'll give a really pretty, like, swirly mix of it. You can see where some of it isn't wanting to move. It's just kind of setting in place since it is speed dry. It's wanting to quite be stubborn, but not want to flow that much. But that's how I like it. I like it to be really soft. I'm gonna put some more black right here. A good black streak right there. One right there. And kind of pressing on, like bouncing it on your cup as you wiggle it down, gives like almost a thin veining. So we're going to keep at that. Drop a little white over some of that black that we just laid down. At this point, we're just tying our design together. This right here is almost too much white. Once again with my baby wipes to help get this alcohol off my hands. We're gonna hit this pearl real quick with the heat gun since it's starting to set already. Just help stretch it a little further. I'm gonna put this on any parts that are too white. Or too black. Kind of that same thing of turning it sideways and dropping it along that line. See a spot right here I don't like. It just kind of ended. That's another thing. I don't like when like a line just ends in the middle of the cup. Like I like for it to kind of finish one spot and, you know, start like this, like it just comes out of nowhere, which isn't horrible, but I like for it to flow a little better. So we'll extend that in this one. All right, I'm gonna take my torch. So for this, I don't have any bubbles in this layer. Working this through a bit, it does help to work out the bubbles. But when you're using speed dry for this, what happens is that from you kind of digging in with your popsicle stick, you do create these kind of thick grooves in the epoxy. And bringing your torch to it, it's not going to get these paints to really move that much, so much as help them thin out just a little, get the epoxy to thin out just a little. That way, when it's time for that next step, if you need a decal, you know, it's not super hard to have to sand down and put a ton of layers on to make up for, you know, those deep creases in from doing the marbling just now. Bring that up. All right, and that's it for this step. That pretty much would be the end of the design for this tumbler. If you need a name, then what we'll do is we'll take this out. If these little crevices are too deep, then I will put another layer of epoxy on this to help fill that in, and then I'll sand it flat, and then I'll put a decal on it. And I would definitely do a layered decal with this, either like a mirror silver with like a pearl white over it, or even like a deep black offset with a silver over it or white over it would be really, really pretty. So I mean, either one of those, I'll see what the order for this really calls for and then go from there. But that would pretty much be it. Just another layer of epoxy, decal if needed. I do need to go back and still sand off that rim and get that, you know, kind of pull down. So we'll work on that part, and I'll be back to show you what the decal will look like. Before I jump too far off this part, I have just a napkin with some rubbing alcohol on it. I am going to take it and run along this bottom seam that I made to help clean this up. That way I'm not fighting with it so much later. It's just a napkin saturated in rubbing alcohol. Someone did ask me why I don't tape the bottoms, why I do my cup edging tool from Wicked Shimmer instead of taping the bottoms. I do a lot of cups in one day, and I usually set them somewhere around this time. I think it's like noon or so. And by the time I get to where I would have to pull the tape, I'm already running out the door with my boys in baseball, or I have 4 boys and we're going crazy somewhere, or I just forget to come back and remove that tape. And it's just too much of a hassle to try to get clean lines after I forget to remove tape, rather than just take a second, wipe it down, and then, you know, get the cup edging tool out and really clean it up. So there's that part. Guys, please don't kill me. I did a few steps and I was like, I was supposed to video this. I get so busy to like start working that I forget. So what I did is I took my Dremel and I put it on my little rotary tool thing, and I went around the top just enough to remove that outer layer, that top, you know, really edge of glitter and epoxy. That way when I go to seal it, I can drag my hand a little along the top, kind of fold it over, not go inside the cup, obviously, but fold it over a bit and have it create a really, really nice seal right around the top. For the bottom, I did take my cup edging tool. I have a clean line around that bottom. I cleaned up the epoxy that went over the edge from the Milky Way, and I have that cleaned up really, really nice on the bottom too. What I'll do is I have my 1-inch round sticker that I will put my logo sticker. It has my logo, and then it also says things like "Do not soak, handle with care," "Do not drop," "Not microwave safe," and a few other things. And I put that on the bottom and kind of sink it in with a heat gun and really press it in there, and then put, I use UV resin. I seal it with UV resin, and I bring it right up to that line. That way it's sealed in there really good. It has my logo on it, but it's also played off with some direction, so it isn't like a big, you know, obnoxious logo on there. Also, that epoxy only goes in this circle. I don't bring it all the way out because I don't want to have it where the edge of this is compromised. That way if someone does drop it, it isn't an issue. So I have that, and I sanded everything down. There's a layer of epoxy that I did put on, again, I'm sorry, that I did put on after I did the Milky Way, and that was just to help fill in some of the crevices that were created from doing this hard Milky Way. As you can tell right now, it has this bit of a matte look to it because it is sanded. Once I that's not even wet anymore. I'm gonna show you guys. If you sand this, once you put a layer of epoxy on this, that shine does come right back. And this is just an alcohol wipe, so I'm showing you that you don't have to worry about the sanding or the grooves. That all gets covered, filled in with the epoxy, and you can't tell that it was sanded or anything. So I have my decal that says Miss Townsend, and the font I used is Canyonlands Script. I got that from Creative Market. The width on this is 6.742, and the height is, well, width is 6.742 and the height is 2.3. I get that I'm mixed up with those, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's laying this way on my Cricut. So there we go. 6.742, 2.353. And I have the black part down. I'm gonna go ahead and get on the silver part. And the way that I determined what colors to use right here, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, I picked a part of the Milky Way that I wasn't completely in love with, and I decided to cover that. There was this one spot where, I don't know if you can tell where this black kind of ends. I probably should have scooted it over more, but there's a crease right here that wasn't completely sanded out, and it would have left a crease in my vinyl. So I went through and I edged it over just a little bit. This is just a matte black vinyl that I have on the bottom. It actually is a removable vinyl. Whenever you're doing epoxy over vinyl, it doesn't matter too much whether it's removable or permanent. And I love this black vinyl because it's so easy. It's so forgiving to work with. You can really pick it up and fix kind of some of those mistakes that moved on me. So I'm gonna smush this down. And I'm gonna get this part, where's my, gonna get this off of here. Pull your transfer tape close to the cup so you don't create any bubbles under your decal. If you were to like lift up like that, you run the risk of kind of lifting that the vinyl away from the cup if it isn't pressed on good enough, and then you'll have kind of that issue of bubbles getting under your decal. And then when I was weeding this, it didn't quite go as planned, and some of my mirror vinyl got caught, so it didn't stay in place, and I forgot to set it back down. So we will go ahead and just struggle with it, guys. Get that to lay down. I don't know where my blade is. I usually have a tool here that I use, and I can't find it. Must have brought it to my other section. All right, so when I get this down, goodness, man. All right, let me go get that because I can't function without it. Sorry, kind of a hot mess a lot of the times. So we'll get this to lay down the way it's supposed to. There we go. So much easier when I have the right stuff where I need it. I just mess myself up sometimes. It takes way longer than it should, but I'm very sorry. Okay, so there we go. Just a pretty decal on this. I don't know, it just comes out so soft and pretty. We'll get this layer of epoxy on there, again with speed dry, and depending on how that goes, it's possible that that one coat of speed dry could be the last layer of epoxy that will go over this decal. I do like to set it up somewhat, not completely thick, because that epoxy does work better in kind of thinner coats, but I'm able to let it mix and then hold for a second before I put it on, and then you can feel if it can be one coat when you're spreading it on, because you won't feel the bumps of the vinyl as you're applying it. You just kind of, you glide over it without even being able to tell that vinyl's on there. So we'll see if that works. We're gonna get this epoxy on here. I have some speed dry mixed up, and we're just gonna go on with a coat of it. I'm not doing super thin because I want to be able to slide my finger over the decal and not quite feel the letters, if that makes sense, like feel where it's raised up with the wording. And the times that I do that, I'm able to just get through with one coat on here. If at some point something doesn't go as planned, like a fly gets in the room, we all know how that goes, or if my kids decide to run through and kick up a lot of dust and I don't get a great finish, then I will put on a second coat. But for the most part, one coat of speed dry is all I really need over decals. It gives me a really, really good finish. Like I said, as long as when it's done, I can run my hand over and not feel the decal, that's all I'll do. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with my torch. I usually don't have problems with bubbles with this, as I always tell you guys like a million times throughout the tutorial. I'm definitely gonna make sure, with this being the mirror vinyl, this chrome mirror Teckwrap vinyl, every once in a while, for some reason, it will wanna cause some bubbles. And I don't quite know why it does that. I feel like some vinyls do that more than others, and definitely with that chrome, it's a lot easier to see any of those bubbles than any other epoxy, any other vinyl that I use. So I'm hitting that real good, making sure my edges. This is where I've done the bottom of my tumbler. It's all cleaned off. This is my final coat if all goes well. So I'm gonna make sure I'm curving this around the end right there. And then I will take my dry baby wipe and some rubbing alcohol. I'm gonna kind of run my hand along the bottom, make sure there's no big drips. And then I'm gonna take my alcohol soaked baby wipe and go in a circle, and then I kind of just keep going around until it's all filled in. I won't have the sticker on the bottom of this yet. I'll do that just before it's ready to ship, and that will be the end of it. See, one spot that didn't go. There we go. Hit that one more time, make sure the bottom's smooth, and that's it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else you want to see. I feel like this design is just so pretty, and I've done this in just about every color imaginable, and I don't know, just a Milky Way, the colors, everything just plays so pretty. It ties its way in. It's just a gorgeous design. So I hope you guys liked it. Please subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions, like this video. Show me some love, please, and I'll see you guys soon.